Roll for Crit presents How to Play Deep Madness in 5 minutes or less or more. Deep Madness is the cooperative sci-fi horror game of fighting, flooding, and devouring, designed by Roger Ho and published by Dimension Games. Your goal in Deep Madness is to complete the objective of your chosen chapter before time runs out on the devouring track, one of your investigators is killed, or the board is overrun with enemies. Each player will receive one or more investigator cards, depending on the number of players, along with any search cards listed there, and a drowning dial. The chapter will tell you how to set up the board, whether there are any special rules in play, and which tile your investigators start on. The board is made up of multiple tiles, some containing multiple spaces as denoted by these lines. Your investigator has a health value, which is how alive they are, a sanity value, which relates to your special abilities, printed here, along with numerous other effects in the game, and an escape value, which determines how good you are at escaping monsters. Each round of the game is made up of 4 phases: Devour, Spawn, Activation, and Refresh. In the Devour phase, move the Devour marker 1 space forward on the Devouring track. Depending on the type of symbol it lands on, there could be an additional effect according to the chapter's rules. If the symbol is a Devour symbol, then flip over a card from the Room deck and place it on top of the face-up Devoured deck. This room tile is about to get devoured. Flip the tile over, maintaining any pieces that were on it in their original positions, and add a spawn marker to one of the tile's spaces of your choice. Also add 1 random Devoured effect marker to each space on that tile. All of this will make your life harder later on. If you flip a room that's already been devoured, nothing happens. Next is the Spawn phase, during which monsters spawn. You'll draw 1 card from the Spawn deck, which will tell you which monster will appear and in what quantity. The top card of the Devoured deck is the tile on which that monster will spawn. Add a number of monsters of the indicated type to that tile equal to the number in the circle at the bottom of the card. Monsters always spawn in the space with the spawn marker known as the spawn space. If there are multiple circled numbers at the bottom of a spawn card, then you must resolve each one in order, putting the top card of the Devoured deck on the bottom in between each time so that each set of monsters appears on a different tile. If you run out of minis for a monster, fill in the gaps with other monsters, making sure to maintain an equal horror value as indicated in the top of the monster card. As the game continues, the Devouring track may tell you to draw different numbers of spawn cards each round, resolving them in the same way. Now the meat of the game is the Activation phase. During this phase, turn order will be determined by the placement of these investigator cards along with these monster cards. Player and monster turns alternate according to the setup here, beginning with a player, then a monster, then a player, and so on. On your turn, you can take 3 total actions in any order that you'd like from the following options. Move. Place your figure in an adjacent space. To move from one tile to another, you'll have to go through a hatch, as you cannot move through walls. Later, you may encounter locked hatches, which investigators can also freely move through. Either way, each movement of 1 space costs you 1 action. You cannot leave your space if the number of monsters there is greater than the number of your escape value. Search. Draw 1 card from the Search deck and place it face up in front of your character card. Each card has its own unique properties which can be used when appropriate. Often they're weapons, which we'll cover later, or other goodies which have various effects as explained on the cards. Some Search cards require you to flip them face down to indicate they've been used for the round. You can only have 4 Search cards at a time. If you would ever draw a 5th and want to keep it, you have to send one of your old ones to the discard pile. You can only perform a Search action once per turn, unlike other actions which can be taken multiple times. Trade. If you're in a space with another investigator, you can swap Search cards as much as you like for 1 action. Attack. If you've got a weapon card and you're near an enemy, you can attack them. At the bottom of the weapon, you'll find a series of traits that tell you how to use it in combat. The range symbol tells you how many spaces away you can attack a monster from with that weapon, as long as they're in a straight line and not behind any locked hatches or flooded areas. If there is no range symbol, it's a melee weapon, which requires you to be in the same space. The dice rating tells you how many 6-sided dice you'll need to roll. The accuracy tells you what number you need to roll on a die in order to succeed, and the damage symbol tells you how much damage you'll do for each one of those rolls. Of course, most weapons come with a special effect or condition that you'll need to take into account as well. Once you've made your roll, total up the damage you've dealt, the card's damage number multiplied by the number of successful dice, and add that damage to the monster, or to each monster in the same space as you if using a melee weapon. Some monsters have a resistance value which you must subtract from your damage number for each attack. If you deal damage equal to or greater than the monster's health, you've killed it and its figure is removed from the board. Otherwise, place a damage token in its base. If you defeat a monster, then you gotta check out its horror value. If you have any sanity tokens in your investigator card, then for each horror, you need to flip them over to become madness tokens. If you get enough Madness tokens to meet your limit, discard all of them and draw a Madness card. Madness cards have nasty ongoing effects, and you do not want them. If you don't have any Sanity tokens, then you get to draw one Consciousness card for each point of horror. These cards feature a whole lot of flavor text and helpful effects. Rest. This action allows you to discard all of your Sanity tokens. On the subject of Sanity tokens, anytime an effect says to exhaust Sanity, that means you receive one Sanity token. If you're told to restore Sanity, you discard one. You can also spend one Sanity token at any time to re-roll one of your dice. You can interact with hatches on the board to try to slow down monsters. As an action, you can place a hatch piece on top of the hatch on the board to indicate that you've locked it. Remove the piece to unlock it, or reset a broken hatch to its normal condition. Hatches become broken if a monster manages to break through it on their turn. Each investigator also has special abilities printed on their card which they can use. Some of these cost actions while others are free. Usually they require you to take Sanity tokens, but remember you can't exceed your Sanity value and they make combat riskier. Depending on the chapter, you may also have special actions available to you like the Investigate action. Read up to find out exactly which actions you need to take and how in order to complete your goals. And finally, on your turn, you can pass if you're cool just doing nothing. After a player takes their turn of 3 actions, a monster gets to go, following activation order. If there are no monsters of that type currently on the board, simply move on to the next player. Otherwise, that monster carries out a series of actions in a specific order according to their card. Move means they move 1 space towards the closest investigator. If a monster attempts to move through a locked hatch, a player must roll 2 dice. As a general rule, a 5 or a 6 on a die is considered a success roll. If the player rolls a number of successes equal to or greater than the monster's horror value, then the monster stays put and can't move again that turn. Otherwise, they bust the hatch open, move right on through, and you place a broken hatch token on that space. If the monster has an attack action, they attack one investigator if one is in range, dealing damage equal to their damage value. The investigator rolls 2 dice and subtracts 1 point of damage for each success they roll. If at any point in the game your investigator receives damage equal to their health total, they're dead and everyone loses. Special actions relate to unique abilities printed on monster cards. Monsters can also have variations on standard actions or actions that only trigger if they're in devoured rooms. Sometimes they make you roll this 12-sided die with its own set of nasty effects according to the card. In addition to the trauma of fighting enemies, you'll also need to worry about various tokens indicating different states that various parts of the board are in. Rooms which have been devoured gain these tokens, each of which has a negative effect on investigators. Some impact your actions during your turn, while others punish you for ending your turn there. Make sure you know what their effects are and plan your movements wisely. Areas of the map can also become flooded, as indicated by these flood tokens. In a flooded area, actions are carried out as normal. However, each action you take requires you to rotate your drowning dial down by 1 number. You know, because you don't have gills. Once you get lower than 0, you'll have to roll a certain number of dice before taking an action, taking a point of damage for each non-success rolled. Stay underwater long enough and eventually this will kill you. But fear not, as soon as you end your turn in a space that isn't flooded, your drowning dial will immediately be rotated back up to its max of 6. There are multiple status effects that could affect you or your monsters. Being slowed forces you to spend a move action to discard your slowed token. Being weakened forces you to do the equivalent for an attack action. Being paralyzed causes a figure to be tipped over and can only stand back up again on its next turn, doing nothing else. And being possessed means a monster moves onto your investigator card and follows you around with attacks. Once all players and monsters have been activated in order, it's time for the refresh phase, during which any flipped search cards get unflipped, any effect marked as end of turn is carried out, and the investigator who was previously first in turn order gets moved to the back of the pack. As soon as you manage to complete the chapter's objectives, you win! Don't let anyone die, run out of monsters, or let the devouring marker reach the end of the track, or you lose. In conclusion, move, search, attack, go mad, breathe. That's Deep Madness in a nutshell. Did you get all that?